Hey, this is Man-Made Mead. Today we're continuing the test I was running where I'm testing a recipe using an independent variable as honey. So basically the same recipe, but the honey is a different thing. So behind me I have two things. I have a, both are 2 gallons. 2 gallons of mead with 4 pounds of honey in each. So 4 pounds of honey plus a Lalvin D47 packet, and so same yeast, just testing how the yeast, how honey and yeast kind of collaborate to create different flavors. But another thing is I wanted to test a big thing, which was this new honey I got, which is a apple cinnamon creamed honey. It's creamed honey that has, goodness gracious, did I say apple cinnamon? It is a creamed honey that has cinnamon in it, not apple cinnamon. Has cinnamon in it, and it is it's something that I picked up when I was going to Colorado. Tried it, it's amazing, and I'm curious to see how it's going to be. So today we're going to do a quick racking over, because I believe I've done some gravity readings over time, and I believe that they have finished fermenting. So we will take gravity readings and then we will move it over. So we're just going to be sure. Here are the gravity readings for both of these meads. Here's the test of the Kirkland honey mead that we used. This is currently at 1.000. Here's a test of the apple cinnamon, oh my lord, of the creamed honey with cinnamon mixed in. I just apparently love apple cinnamon. If you didn't know, now you know. 1.000. We are settled out for that one as well. So both of them have evened out, and which is good. I think that they're lighter on my normal scale. I normally make a pretty hefty mead, and these are pretty light. So next step is going to be to take and rack them into new containers. So I will go ahead and do that using my auto siphon, which is over here, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I finished racking them over into some new containers. Here's kind of what was left at the bottom of one of them. The Kirkland, this is the apple cinnamon one. The Kirkland one looked very similar. I wish I had taken a couple videos of the, holy cow, apple cinnamon, of the honey cinnamon, of the creamed, holy cow. That is, I think that's time number 3. It is creamed honey. Apparently I just like apple cinnamon, even though this is kind of what we're going to make this into. And it had a lot of cinnamon up at the top of the fermentation at the beginning. It was weird how the yeast interacted with the cinnamon. But then, now I don't really see much cinnamon in here. If you look very close at the bottom, there's some caked underneath the yeast. So maybe it fell down there. I don't know, but it's gone. So the Kirkland one looked very similar, of course, without little brown specks of cinnamon in there. So now I'm gonna do a quick taste test. In my right hand, your left, is the cinnamon creamed honey, and in my left hand, your right, is the Kirkland. So these are both technically traditionals, even though the creamed honey one feels a little cheaterish, called a traditional with cinnamon being in there. I don't know if you'd really call it traditional. So let's do a quick taste test. I'm gonna do the Kirkland honey, which is the Costco brand, by the way. It smells really good. It smells very sweet. Even though they're leveled out, you definitely get the smell of the honey character. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's a little yeasty right now because I kind of mixed it up a little bit in moving them. But I definitely get a good round honey character, sweetness, just a little sweetness, even though it is dry. And there is, while the Kirkland honey is a little cheaper, it's still not a bad honey. I don't know how pure it is, quote, but it's really not too bad. Let's try the creamed honey, not the apple cinnamon yet. This one, you definitely smell the cinnamon. I think this one's gonna be sweet. Interesting. That's very, very dry. Not what I thought at all. Very dry, get a lot of cinnamon character in there. A little yeasty as well, even though that I put it in my cold, well, not cold crashing, but it was sitting at about 60 degrees. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's not as much honey character as I'd want. I think the honey kind of fell backwards behind the cinnamon. Maybe the cinnamon was just so prominent that it poked its head through. So I don't know. This one, I thought I was going to like the creamed honey version more, but I actually like the Kirkland. Has a nicer, fuller character. I would say in the comparison of this yeast, how the yeast the yeast affected each one. In my experience with the D47, it normally runs most meads dry, and so everything I've done has been dry. You normally get like I haven't had a really bad yeasty flavor before with the D47. I do get a little with this one. It's not bad, it just needs some more time to set. It's pretty good. The next step is to make this into an apple cinnamon, apple flavored mead. And what I mean by that is I do want to go ahead and take, because I like the recipe that I have made for my apple cinnamon, which is basically putting on top of this probably about 6 pounds of apples. I haven't decided what apples yet. I'll be back soon with some more info on that. But as far as a traditional taste test of this is pretty good. I'll be back in this next clip to tell you about the next steps. Okay, so it's been probably about a week since I did my taste test. Our next step is to start to add our apples and our cinnamon. So, like I said, this is the apple cinnamon recipe I really like, and it's pretty good. And I have gone ahead and cut up all my apples, and I've also got my cinnamon sticks here. So I'm just using McCormick straight up cinnamon sticks. You see, I'll put one in each container. So I also have here, like I said, I've cut up my apples. And in here is about 8 pounds of apples, and they're mixed. They are Red Delicious apples, and they are also Fuji apples. I like the two different kinds, and I think it'd be interesting to see how their flavors combine alongside, of course, their yeast and all these things. So our next step is going to be to weigh these out. This is all 8 pounds. I'm going to put 4 pounds in each with them mixed. So this was my Star San water that I sanitized all of my apples with, and it's got little apple bits in it, so I'm just going to dump it out for now. And then I'm going to use this bucket because I can get more Star San water. It's easy. I'm going to use this bag right here, and then I'm also going to use this muslin bag. And so this muslin bag is just a little bit smaller, but it'll still hold our 4 pounds. I'm just going to wrap it around this bucket like that, so that when I put my fruit in, it works fine. Let's weigh the actual bucket real fast. This thing's all messed up. How much does this thing weigh? This thing weighs 9.9 pounds, so I'm probably closer to, actually, let's see, without the apples in it. Ooh, no, I'm right. The bucket weighs 1.9 pounds, and the apples weigh altogether 9.9, so that's exactly 8 pounds. We're going to go ahead and separate these out, and just going to make sure my hands are clean, because you really don't want to mess this up and get any bacteria onto your own mead. Okay, so I'm going to start dropping in some apples until we get to, let's see, until we get to 4 pounds. So this bucket weighs about half a pound. And I'm going to move these over. Now while I'm doing this, I will tell you the next step, which is going to be to freeze these apples. And the reason we freeze apples, and lots of fruit in general, is because it breaks down and explodes the cells of the fruit, which releases more flavor, ultimately. And I think that's really important to try and get a mead that has, especially one like this that's supposed to be apple flavored, a full-bodied apple flavor. If we don't have that full-bodied apple flavor, it's just kind of a traditional, and that's kind of boring. What I'm also going to do, let's see, I think that's 3.9. Let's see, this is 4. Yeah, okay. So these are both at 4 pounds, which is perfect. 4 pounds, and they're mixed apples, like I just said. What I'll do is freeze them. I will need to put them into, because I don't have my big enough freezer, I need to put these into big freezer baggies. So these freezer bags will help us, you know, keep juices from going everywhere. When it's time to go ahead and add the apples in, we're simply going to, if I can get this to work, we're simply going to just take them out, let them thaw, and then throw them in. There's not anything crazy, nothing wild to do there. It's an easy process. I really like using the bags, these muslin bags or this brewing bag, because it allows for you to just steep them in there, and you don't worry so much about trying to collect a bunch of sediment, because the sediment kind of gets caught in the bag. This is not being friendly. I'll be back in a moment when I've put these away into these bags. Okay, so I've got both bags, 4 pounds here, 4 pounds here, very tightly fit. We will put these into the freezer, and the reason I said freezer is because it allows for our full fruit flavor to get there. So we will let this freeze for about probably 2 days. Then I'll pull it out the day that I want to add them into the mead, and they'll thaw. And then we'll start to add it into these meads. And because they're bags, we'll just steep them in, throw them in, time off, let it go, probably for about 2 weeks. I really watch the fruit to make sure they don't go bad. The good thing about putting fruit in the secondary is that you have alcohol content to rely on to protect your fruit from bacteria, so there's kind of a safety net there. You don't necessarily always have that in the primary because you don't have much alcohol content to run off of. But I'm curious to see how this goes. I'll put 1 cinnamon stick in each one of these, and then we'll go from there. It's a really easy process, and I'm curious to see, again, how these fruit flavors, yeast changed, or how the yeast impacted the different honeys, and then how even now they'll collaborate with the fruit. Which reminds me, I definitely should not have forgot this. In order for me to retain some sweetness from my apples, my next step will be to also stabilize. And I know that lots of people are against this, but the truth is in stabilizing using potassium sorbate, potassium metabisulfite. The metabisulfite allows for you to preserve your mead for longer, and the potassium sorbate, it does stabilize, stop the yeast, but it keeps the sweetness of the apples, which that's where most of your apple flavor is, or your fruit flavor in general, is in the sugars. So I don't really want the yeast just chowing down, picking up again and chowing down on all this fruit flavor that I'm trying to add, because then it just goes away. So I will probably in the next clip show my stabilizing of this mead. Continuing on in this test of yeast with our different honeys, I have the apple creamed honey, which was the creamed honey we used with cinnamon whipped into it, and then the Kirkland. I did a taste test about probably a week and a half ago, and now I have my apples. So right here, I have 2 bags right now. Both bags have about 3.5, excuse me, let me get my math right. They have about 4 pounds of apples, because I did 5 pounds of Red Delicious apples, and I have 3 pounds of the Gala apples, and I mixed them all together, and now I have about a pound, try to get my numbers right, 1.5 pounds of Gala apples, 2.5 pounds of Red Delicious in each bag. So we're gonna put these in here, 4 pounds of apples. Again, I put the recipe here if you don't remember it, or it'll be down in the description. And these will sit in the secondary for quite a while. I'm making, like I said, way early on, the apple cinnamon recipe that I like quite a bit. I love the apple cinnamon mead, and it's just a standard recipe that I'm trying to build upon all the time. One thing I do want to do is add some cinnamon into the apple Kirkland one. I'm not putting it into a cinnamon stick into the creamed honey mead because it had cinnamon in it already, and I feel like that'd be an overload of cinnamon. It's already got a nice cinnamon flavor to it. So this is a really easy step. These are both bagged, but then they're bagged again with like a mesh bag, so I can just basically drop the fruit in. So here's what I'm gonna do. Move this aside. I'm just gonna put 1 in here. Oh, I should also mention, and I didn't mention this earlier, I stabilized with potassium sorbate and potassium metabisulfite, which are 2 things that stabilize alcohol. the sorbate is what actually slows down the yeast and slows activity to a halt, basically. And the metabisulfite is kind of the same thing, but it also acts as a preservative. So hopefully the mead will last longer. I'm not always the biggest fan of using preservatives, but in this case I definitely was okay with using it because I want the the sweetness of these apples to be imparted into the mead comfortably. And if you don't stabilize, then you run into the issue that the yeast will pick up fermentation again, and you'll just have more fermentation on new sugars, which ends up running away a lot of the flavor of apples and fruits in general. So now we're going to put this in here, and I need to tie this off. I haven't tied it off yet. I really like these bags. This one's in a kind of like a painter's bag, and then the other one I have is in a muslin bag. Muslin bags are both, I mean, all these are brew safe, but the muslin bags are a little cheaper, and they only really get 1 to 2 uses. And I'll show you here in a second once I finish this one. I'm tying it off just to make sure that there's no apples that come out. So that's in there now, and those will sit for probably a couple weeks, 2 weeks maybe. The good news is there's alcohol present in the mead, and that pretty much means that bacteria will have a harder time growing, which is nice because you don't want to have to worry about bacteria when you're messing with mead, and because they get off flavors and all that. This is, if I can open it, this bag's not being friendly. This is the muslin bag I'm talking about. It's a little thinner, but it does the job just as well. I had frozen this fruit. If you've seen my video, or maybe, I don't know if it's out yet or not, about how to better, kind of 3 tips to get more fruit flavor in your meads. This is what I use for that. So put this in here. It's basically like a giant tea bag, and these will make it really easy to pull out in the end after I'm done letting them set and age with them on it. The one thing you do have to watch out for is, and I wish I could get a better showing right now, the fruit isn't always exposed all the way around. So you kind of have to probably once a day or so go in and push the fruit down just so it gets submerged for a second and covered in that alcohol to save it from going bad, but also bacteria. But with having frozen the fruit, and I explained in that video, you basically blow up the cells in the fruit, which allows for the fruit to have to get its flavor more into the mead. Because when you explode the cells, you're basically exploding all the sugars and all the flavor of the fruit out and about, and now it will hopefully be a little bit stronger. So 4 pounds of apples for about a gallon of mead, a gallon and a half of mead is pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and close these up. We'll let them age for about, oh, I missed one thing. I'll fix it right now. We'll let them age for about, I would say, 2 weeks, and we'll see what happens. I'm gonna put a cinnamon stick, these are just standard cinnamon sticks, into the Kirkland one. Only gonna put in 1. This is already, like I said, the creamed already had cinnamon whipped into the honey, therefore don't really feel like I need to put any more cinnamon in. I will let these age for another 2 weeks, moving the bag every once in a while to make sure it stays good, and then we'll be back to see what happens next. It's been roughly about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks since I put in the apples into our different honeys kind of test. So here, you can't really see it right now, but this right here is the apple creamed mead, and this is the Kirkland honey. Now, what I'm going to do today is show you kind of what the bags look like after 3 weeks of fermentation. Really, I'm not calling it fermentation because the yeast are dead. There's not been any pickup of fermentation, which is nice. So the fruits generally, they go a little bad. I think it's probably good and safe to pull them out after 3 weeks. So let's show you what the apples look like after a little while. What's important to note is that you don't want to, especially if you are putting them in a bag like this you see here. So So this is my bag of all my apples. You don't want to, when you're taking this out, take and squeeze it, because a lot of you think like the juices and stuff would come out. Really, you're just taking and getting a bunch of sediment inside of it. So what I'll do, and I need to get something to throw, what I'm gonna do is take and grab my bag, and I'm just gonna put it in this bucket for now. I will let it drain a little bit, because that's fine, but I'm not gonna squeeze it. Okay, throw that in there. I'll do the same thing with this other bucket, and then we're gonna do a quick taste test. Here's our taste test. You can see this is or you're right now. This is the creamed honey one, and it clearly is a little cloudier, which is interesting. And compared to this is the Kirkland honey. I think the creamed honey just had a little harder time clearing up, which is okay. I did, just based on smell, when I was opening it up, I feel like the Kirkland honey smells better. The creamed honey was a little disappointing without the apples in it, but we'll see. So I'm going to start with the creamed honey, which is this one. It's way improved. Okay, so there's sugars from the from the apples that really help out quite a bit. Also, there's that cinnamon in there, and that cinnamon is very pronounced. Yeah, the apple flavor is really strong and really good. I think I like combining these apples, combining this Red Delicious and also the Gala apples. So I think that's a good combination of them. You get the sweetness from the sugars. That's why I like stabilizing before putting fruit in sometimes. That sugar really helps from the fruit. It really helps to add sweetness, which if you like a sweeter mead, that helps. I didn't add a ton of sweetness, but it's definitely there, and you get the flavor of the fruit. Let's try it compared to this now. This is the Kirkland, the cheaper honey in a way. Ooh. Wow, that's really good. The apple flavor pops a lot. The honey has more character in this Kirkland honey, or Kirkland mead, excuse me. I thought that the cheaper honey would have less character, but it's got almost more character. That's fantastic. Wow, it definitely tastes like more fruit juicy, which is interesting, but it's got that nice little after brandish of the cinnamon, which is pretty good. I think if I were choosing, believe it or not, choosing which honey to use for this mead, the same yeast and everything, the Kirkland honey is better. It's cheaper. The 5 pounds of the apple, of the creamed cinnamon mead, or creamed honey, excuse me, that was $30. This honey, the Kirkland, was like, I think 15 or 12, something like that. Pretty cheap, half the price, and it's pretty good. I'm going to do more experimenting with the Kirkland honey in the future. The next step for these is going to be, I'm just going to put the lid back on. I'm not going to rack it over just yet. I will rack it over soon. But I'm going to put these lids on, and then in a couple days, I need to do some moving of stuff around, and then I'll be able to move it into a carboy of sorts. But I don't want to rack it off yet. I think it'll be fine to age a little bit longer like this, even though there's air on top. I don't want to leave the air for too long. It's pretty close to bottling time for these guys. So I will wait a little bit and either put them in a carboy if I can get enough carboy space, or bottle it. So I'll be back soon with my next step. Okay, so it's been a couple days since we did our taste test, pulled the apples off. We're ready to go ahead and bottle it, and I'm gonna bottle age it. The difference between bottle aging and bulk aging is bottle aging has some more independent variables. You can have differences between bottles because you put your liquid, your whatever, into the bottle, and then individually each one can go through different temperature changes, all that stuff. Whereas bulk aging, everything ages the same way and gets manipulated. So I'm fine with bottle aging this one, especially because I have other projects I want to work on. Today we are going to be using, of course, the meads, and then I have a bucket here to elevate my stuff. There's a capper. I'm using beer bottles, and I'm also using corks because I have a couple wine bottles that I want to fill. So I don't know how much exactly I'll get out of all of this stuff, but I do anticipate it being at least, I mean, this is about 2 gallons. We'll find out how many bottles of each. I will individually label them different things in the future. I don't have those official labels made yet, so I'll just do a little fake label today. I have over here, this is my bucket of Star Sand. I forgot to grab it. This is my bucket of Star Sand that I used to, basically I would dump each bottle into here and that helps clean everything. And then I also sanitize everything through it before I use it. Bottling is a very easy process. In fact, I'll show you one bottle and then I will just go ahead and bottle the rest of them and come back and we'll talk about the next step. But with the bottling process, I'll try to get a good angle here. I'm going to raise this up here to elevate to where gravity will help me move the mead over. I've already sanitized my equipment before the video started. I'm going to get one bottle going and then basically just let it'll go on its own. With bottling, you want to go from a higher surface to a lower surface. You also want to sanitize, like I was saying. I'm going to fill each bottle using this bottle wand. What I always do is I fill almost all the way to the top till it gets to where it's about to overflow, and then I stop, and then I go to the next one. I'm going to go ahead and fill a wine bottle while I'm thinking about it too. But this bottling wand is real nice, pretty cheap, and there are better ways to do this, but I'm pretty fine with this way. So I'm going to fill the rest of these, and then we'll talk about corking. I need to do both of these. Currently, this is the Kirkland, the cheaper honey one, and then I of course have the apple creamed honey version that's over here as well. I'll bottle them, and then we'll be right back and talk about the next step. In total, with each one, I got about, sorry, I got to separate them out a little bit. This is 8 beer bottles of the creamed honey, and then 3 wine bottles, 2 375 milliliters. Then of the Kirkland honey, the cheaper honey, I got 3 wine bottles, a 375 milliliter, and 10 beer bottles. So quite a bit of this mead. Next step is going to be to cap them. So the capper is real simple. I can show you this with a capping, step process. Basically, I'm going to be using 2 different kinds of caps, different colors. For the Kirkland, I'm just going to use white, and I'll show you an example one. Basically, you just take and put, put your cap on there, and then you put your bottle underneath, you press down, and oh, I got it sideways. Every once in a while my capper has a little bit of an issue. That should be fine now. There we go. So there we go. I've got a capped bottle of mead. I will do that with the rest of all of these. Now let me also show you the corking process. The corking process is also similar. I'm going to be using this. This is an Italian floor corker. And with the floor corker, I like to use, corking in general, I like to use synthetic corks. And synthetic corks are really nice because they don't deal with any oxygen issues. So they kind of look like this. They're a little more expensive sometimes, but it's not that bad. I always get them, put a little water on them, or Star Sand in this case. And then you basically just push down, get your bottle there, and I need to mount it on a piece of wood. When you push, it should, if all went well, create a nicely corked bottle of mead. So I'll do that with all of these, and then I'll be right back. I finished corking and capping everything. So like I said, I got all my numbers. Here's what I've done. This is just an example with the 2 of them. I put a temporary label on them. This is my creamed honey, just for now. I mean, it's nothing special. And this is the Kirkland. And what I'm gonna do, of course, is put real labels on them in the future. The goal is not to just leave those on. Those are kind of lame in my opinion, but especially because they're handwritten. This is just a little temporary label paper. The thing I like about it is they come off with water because they're like a sugar of a sort, so it's kind of nice. I really like using Those synthetic corks, I highly recommend using them if you do cork things. And of course, caps are cheap. You know, caps are pretty standard. There's nothing special. But I did separate them by colors, so I know what's what. I know that this is the, and I labeled one of these. This is the Kirkland, this is the cream. So when I go back to label them properly, I can do that. But I really enjoyed getting to make this one. This is a fun little test, and I think the results of what I found is, of course, you know, honey does make a difference on flavor, but I kind of had a secondary test that I suddenly realized, and that is not the quality of your honey doesn't matter, but that Kirkland honey, I was very skeptical of it. It being a $12 to $15 bottle of honey for it's cheap. I was like, there's no way this is going to be good. It turned out pretty good. If you need a cheaper alternative to buy honey, maybe try that honey. That's pretty good. And then, not to say that the higher quality honey is not better, is not worth it. I was a little underwhelmed by the creamed honey, but maybe that was just how the yeast I used, all that. Maybe it just had a bad reaction with that. Anyways, I've really enjoyed getting to make this, especially because I'm constantly developing my new recipe for the apple cinnamon mead, which is one that I really like, and hopefully, you know, in a couple iterations, I'll be able to make the exact mead that I want, and then I'll be able to keep reproducing it. But check out the ingredients below if you want to try to make this mead. And of course, check out the other links. I have a Facebook page. There's also a Facebook group, Man-Made Mead Makers, and that's a lot of fun. We get to talk about mead making more specifically. We have people talking there every day. It's really cool. And of course, just the normal page. There's also a Patreon where you can go support me, and there are a bunch of perks there. I hope you will join me on that. That helps me out big time. A merchandise store, society6.com. I have a website, manmademead.com. Check that out. That's got some links as well. And some other things. I've got a P.O. box. All of that stuff's down below. The most important thing you can do to help me is like and subscribe. I really appreciate that. And then, of course, share. Don't just share my videos. Share Mead. Share your experiences with it. Tell people about it so that we can start, you know, making it more and maybe make it a more prevalent and bigger part of our world, and, you know, it not be this kind of hidden alcohol. But thank you guys for watching. I'll do more tests like this in the future. Hopefully I'll get to expand on different recipes and have a lot of fun with that. But anyways, it's been a blast, and check out the other videos if you haven't seen them. And of course, hopefully we'll see you in another video. So with that, have a great day and cheers.